Welcome guys, today I'll explain an American action crime film called Faster. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. At the beginning of the film, we are immediately shown the figure of the main character in this film, named James, and is referred to as the driver. He's behind bars in prison, when taken away by another prison officer, who was in the cell showed anger at him. The head of the prison officer named Warden called him, and several photos of other injured prisoners are shown here, and it seems to be the reason why other prisoners hate him so much. It was his first day of freedom. Warden gave him a business card if he needed any help out there. Out of prison, James threw away the business card. There was no pickup or taxi there, he just ran until he got to a place. James apparently kept his cool car here. He then took out a document and a photo of someone along with the gun he had prepared. Revenge and anger still enveloped him. He immediately drove his car until he arrived at a city. Ignoring the passing cars, he crossed the street and entered an office looking for someone, and without further ado, this was what he did. Then the scene moves to a toilet. Two people are doing drug transactions. One of them is named John Holmes. In his car, John uses the drugs until he feels the world is his own. John turned out to be a detective. He came to the location of the murder committed by James. Cicero was the name of the female detective who handled this case. He did not believe in John's arrival because, according to him, their leader Mallory would not allow him to take the case. It was also revealed that John would be retiring in the next 2 weeks. Then James came to the house of a mafia to ask for a few more names of the people he was targeting, because James did not want to pay more. The mafia ordered his subordinate named Kenny to beat up James. However, it turned out that when Kenny saw the tattoo on James's hand, his guts immediately shrunk and fled, because James was considered a scary ghost for him. At the police station, Cicero and John see the CCTV footage of James' actions. He was sure the man James had killed was aware of his arrival. Then James saw the identity of his next target named Nixon, then a woman named Nan Porterman, and an old man named Tyson. On the second day after being released from prison, a professional assassin known as Kíllers is training his physical strength. From his childhood photo, it turns out that he used to use an assistive device on his feet, and apparently he has a really charming girlfriend named Lily, and they both immediately fell in love. He gets an unknown call for a new job, and his target is James. As a professional assassin, he certainly had the perfect equipment. And this man started his action by first monitoring the activities of the old man. Back at the police headquarters, Cicero tried to find the identity of James, including seeing a photo of the tattoo that James had on his hand. After getting out of prison, James is known to have a lot of money, and he works alone. Anyone who disturbs him, including in prison, will be beaten down. It was revealed 10 years ago that James and his gang carried out a robbery at a bank, and he was assigned to be a driver with his driving skills to bring his team away from the police. Returning to the old man, who was James' target, he was helped by a beautiful girl to enter his house. The killer who was monitoring there saw a car that James was traveling in coming to the same place. The killer started to prepare his weapons, as well as James, who was overcome with anger and sadness, got out of his car. However, before that, he always saw pictures of himself and his brother, Jerry. Later in the video footage seen by Cicero and John is revealed. After the robbery, another group came to their place and immediately attacked. John asked how Cicero got this tape. It turned out that a week after he became a detective, he did a porn video operation, and that's where he got this video. It looks like James and Jerry are being forced by them to show the location of the money they stole. At his house, it turns out that this lecherous old man gave the girl sleeping pills. In the tape, James tells Jerry to say the location of the money for their safety, and he ends up mentioning the money is on the kitchen floor, which is a little suspicious. Detective John, who saw this tape, was a little nervous. This group finally slits Jerry's throat, and one of the perpetrators is the man James shot dead in his office, and the old man plays a role in recording their action. Back to the James who broke into the old house. While walking out, the killer appears and a gun battle between them finally ensues. James refused to serve him and hurried off. In the footage, James was shot in the head, and the hospital claimed he was dead. In fact, the bullet went through his skull to his cheek, and he had to have an iron plate inserted in it. Lucky, he came back alive to take revenge. John turned out to have a cute son from his ex-wife. When he was about to take him, Cicero called him to come to the crime scene because there had been a shooting. Again, the killer contacted Lily and told her that his target was not a random person. Without fear and mercy, he shot him quickly, and the last word said to Lily was bye. Then James stayed at a motel, and when he saw the news footage of him as a murder suspect was shown. The third day, when John was about to take a drink, his hand got hot water, and when he opened his sleeve, Slàughter saw a tattoo there. He reasoned the tattoo was made while in LA at the accident unit. James continues his mission. This time his target is a woman who already has a child. In fact, the woman is his ex-wife. When James left her, she was so pregnant she was forced to have an abortion. The killer ends up marrying his girlfriend Lily, and he promises to leave his job as a hitman and live happily with her. John returns to Marina's house and begs her to stay there overnight. Marina, who knows he is an addict, asks for the drugs he brought. James continued his mission. He arrived at a place of entertainment and saw a man with a tattoo on his hand. It was this man who slit Jerry's throat. Here James follows him as he goes to the toilet. He realizes James has come to seek revenge. The old man who was there was told to leave. Before he died, he said someone had told them to kill him. He also gave his cell phone to James to say sorry to his son. The killer returned to see the wedding photos of him and Lily. However, the moment he saw his childhood photo, reappeared the photo of James, who was his target. Finally, he decided to finish the job. However, Lily was surprised that she was holding her gun again, even though she had promised not to work again. However, the killer also promised this was the last time. The fourth day, the killer came out of his house to finish his work, and John called Slàughter, from which it was learned that 2 of the murder victims were informants. James, who is listening to the radio, learns that the target he stabbed last night is still alive and in critical condition. He then turned his car back to the hospital, as well as the killer who was chasing James to the same hospital. James bursts into the operating room and shoots the man dead. John, who was in the hospital, immediately chased James, until in a basement they shot each other, until he managed to point John right in the head. However, James did not kill him, especially when he saw the police badge. James immediately left. In the car, the cell phone belonging to the man he killed again rang. His son told James he would hunt him down and kill him. James let him do that. However, he had to believe in his decision because he had a long and dark road ahead of him. The killer, who had been following James, immediately chased him. Car chases are shown here. Here James managed to hold him, but after seeing that he was not the target, he just shot the tire of his car, in contrast to the killer who was intent on killing him and shot him in the neck. James came to his parents' house. He immediately held up his mother and asked for information on his father's whereabouts. It turned out that his father had died 4 years ago. James feels his father has set him and his younger brother, Jerry, for money. However, his mother insisted his late father could not do that because he also loves Jerry. James has not found the person who framed them until suspicions arose about Jerry's girlfriend. On the 5th day, James' next target was someone named Alexander. It turned out that now he was converted and became a priest. He was surprised when he saw James appear in front of him. Before James executes him, comes his wife and children on the shore of the lake. James will shoot him. However, he also told me that after the incident, he became a drug addict and a woman until he was thrown into prison. That's where he got a call. James pressed the trigger. However, it turned out that he let her live. Turns out the killer was there and saw James free the man. James returned to the church and brooded there because he felt all his targets had been finished. Suddenly, killer appeared and pointed his gun. On the other hand, John arrived at that location as well. Slàughter, who inquired about his whereabouts, would soon follow, seeing a new evidence into their headquarters. James here does not want to fight the killer because he feels no grudge against him. Killer feels harassed by James even though he has been trying to kill him for the past 3 days. However, the reason was not strong enough for James. Here killer says that James has one more target, the person who hired him, and he's still alive. Then John appeared there and told the killer to lower his gun. Killer doesn't want to do that because he hasn't finished his work yet. Suddenly John shot James, and it was revealed he was the person who shot James in the head 10 years ago. James did not know his identity, and it turned out that Jerry's girlfriend was his informant while he was on duty in LA. All of the targets James killed were John's informants. Killer leaves from that place. On the other hand, Slàughter had received information about the policeman who was behind all this, and it was John. When John was calling Marina because she had killed the suspect, and they wanted to start a new life, but James was still alive and shot John in the back. It turns out that James is still alive because of the iron plate that was implanted in his skull after the incident 10 years ago. Shortly after that, Slàughter came to the crime scene and found John dead. He also closed the truth to his superiors, and at the end of the story, James was calmer to sprinkle the ashes of his brother's body, and the film ended.